Welcome to my video series on launching an AI startup in under 28 days. This is the chapter on nailing the idea, picking the right one, thinking through uncertainty, and getting it right, because this is a super, super critical stage. But first of all, where's the source of our credibility coming from? The first one and the most important one is that we worked with somewhere like 45 or 50 different AI startups last year on launch and growth strategy. And so this is super important. And all the things that you're going to be seeing today are based not only on my 10 plus years of entrepreneurship experience, but also all the data that we've gathered from 45 plus startup launches and growth strategies last year in 2024. The first step to nailing an idea is, first of all, understanding who you are. This sounds like it's a pivotal concept, but I can tell you immediately that if you are an 18-year-old who has never had a kid and you are launching an app to, go ahead and help people do baby care, I can pretty much already guarantee you that you're doomed unless you do an absolute amount of customer outreach and conversations. The key here, when it comes down to picking a path in life or picking an idea, generally speaking, is you have to understand who you are and what you're good at. Because if you try to pick something that you're not, it's going to be miserable for you. You can imagine Einstein trying to compete in basketball against Michael Jordan or something. And that's pretty much the comparison here that we're trying to get across. Um, and so the entire thing of picking a good idea comes down to, number one, understanding who you are. And then number two, understanding what the world needs. And so it's a very simple concept here. You can see the stuff on the left is going to be what you're good at and what you love. And the stuff on the right is going to be what you can be paid for and what the world needs. And you try to get towards the center of this. And this is actually a concept that the Japanese call ikigai. Ikigai. It's very interesting, and you can go ahead and look this up. As a general concept, know who you are and then find what the world needs and then look for that overlap and then see what sort of things you can do in that space. The next step that we want to go ahead and look at is actually what we call the 11 pillars. And this is a framework that we've actually developed internally when it comes down to investing in ideas, advising on certain ideas, and even launching our own companies. And what the 11 pillars are, in full transparency, even though there's sometimes 12 or 13 of this, are fundamental timeless business principles that we have seen drastically increase the probability of success of any one startup that we end up working with. And so we're going to go ahead and combine these 11 pillars with what we consider our ikigai to try and create a really great business here. So the first thing that you want to see in a great business is recurring revenue. And the question is why? Well, I can tell you, as somebody that's run both businesses that have recurring revenue as well as just one-time revenue, the one-time revenue businesses are very tough to go ahead and scale because you don't have consistent cash flow coming in. You spend a lot of time on sales calls and a lot of time trying to extract new money from new customers, as opposed to being able to go ahead and reap the rewards of a long-term existing relationship. And so you definitely want recurring revenue if your business model will allow for it. The second thing you want to do here is you want to align with human nature. I can tell you for a fact that people do not enjoy new exercise routines. They don't enjoy dieting, and there's a lot of things that we don't enjoy doing, generally speaking. And what I would what I would encourage you to do is don't fight human nature, because if your entire business model relies on people going to the gym or changing their diet or doing something just completely outside the realm of possibilities for most people, you are going to be pulling teeth to make this happen. And so I definitely do not recommend that. I would say try to align with human nature as much as possible, and then make it even easier for people to be who they naturally are. Necessity for survival. This is a big one, because uh, your business needs to work all the time. Now, it's different when you're a salaried employee and you're working at some big business, and this big business is responsible for bringing you all of your income. It's a different story when you are a founder and when you are sitting there trying to get your sales and you are trying to do everything you're trying to do. And so your business needs to work 100% of the year. It doesn't need to just work 80% of the year, which is unfortunately what happens if your business is not like recession proof. One of the ways that we test this is through the COVID check, okay, or the COVID lockdown check. And so the question is, would your business have been open when everything else was closed? And ideally, the answer is yes. If the answer is not yes to that, at least ask yourself: is this something that people would still spend money on? When money is tight or when you're in a recession or something. If the answer is no, very very strongly consider whether you want to go ahead and launch a business that's only going to work 80% of the time. That's something very important to consider. The other thing we want to think about is barriers to entry. So you might have a great business idea and it might really be amazing, but if it's not difficult, if there's nothing niche about it, if there's nothing difficult to copy about it, what's going to eventually happen is that in the same way that you go ahead and try to get customers, you are also going to educate your competitors on what you're doing in the marketplace. And if somebody sees that you have a great idea and a great offer, but for whatever reason, it's extremely easy to copy because there's nothing super specific about it, what they're going to do is just copy your entire idea. They're going to go ahead and clone the thing, and then they're going to decrease their price a little bit. And before you know it, you're going to be in a price war where they're competing for your customers, you're competing for theirs. So an ideal business idea also is like at least slightly difficult to do, or at least has enough difficulty to replicate that it will give you enough of a moat or enough of a a lead that people can't just like very quickly catch up. We also want to see a high ticket value in some of these businesses that we get involved in. And the reason is very simple. Typically, it's easier to sell, let's say, $1,000 product to 10 people versus, selling a $1 product to like 10,000 people or something, right? Like it's typically easier to go ahead and find 10 or 15 or 20 customers than it is to find 10,000. And it also just means that you're managing a lot less workload. So in the beginning, I understand selling low ticket items and whatnot, but I think as a general concept, selling high ticket actually ends up being very beneficial for most business owners. Another thing that you want to see here is a growing market. And why do we want to see a growing market? Well, a growing market pretty much indicates that there's growing customer demand or a growing amount of customers that are looking for the service that you offer or the product that you offer. And that's really, really important because if you're working in a shrinking market, what's going to happen is that you're going to have a fewer and fewer and fewer amount of customers that you and all your competitors are going to be competing for. And so this is not good. A growing market goes ahead and gives you an expanding pool of customers you can go ahead and sell to, which is a really important thing. Let's talk about long-term customer relationships here. This goes into something that we call retention. Okay, and so there's two sides of getting a great business going. The one side is getting your customers, and the second side is holding on to those customers for a long time. And I can promise you, if you don't crack the customer retention problem, it's going to be very, very difficult to build a great business. In fact, the greatest businesses that I've ever worked with or ever been a part of have held on to their customers like nearly forever, 5, 10, 15 years. This is an amazing thing. And what it allows you to do is sell a customer one time and continue to get revenue from that customer for the rest of their lifetime. So this is an incredibly important thing. And the larger your retention, it also increases something called your customer lifetime value, which directly corresponds with how much you can spend to acquire a customer and then how much money you can actually put into providing a great service for them. So these are really, really important things. Another thing you want to look at with some of the greatest businesses that have ever been invented so far is something called low replication cost. This is something that a guy named Naval Ravikant, he's the CEO of AngelList, talks about. And basically what we're talking about is having zero marginal cost of replication. And so typically this is going to correlate with digital assets. So things like songs, things like courses like this one, things like an ebook. All of these are examples of digital assets that have zero cost to go ahead and replicate once they're actually built. And this is an amazing thing because what it allows you to do is build something one time and sell it infinite amounts of time. You can compare this to something like physical assets. And so we'll take real estate as an example here, where in real estate, you might build a home, and I think that's an amazing thing. But if you want to build a second home, you're going to have to spend pretty much the same amount, if not maybe get a 5-10% discount on just sort of a quantity discount. And what working in digital assets allows you to do, whether that's code or anything else, is go ahead and clone that a million times over. And so it becomes very, very, very beneficial and super important to a business owner that wants to run a great business and also have very high margins and make sure that that business is profitable. Another thing you want to see here is something called a mini monopoly. You can almost compare this to being like the only landlord in a small town or something, because what it allows you to do is basically pick your prices. And as a general concept, you also want to create a category of one. It's something that Peter Thiel has coined, and Peter Thiel is one of the PayPal mafia guys. And long story short, what this allows you to do is when you are in a category of one or when you create your own category, what it allows you to do is set your own prices. It allows you to create differentiation in a customer's mind so that you're no longer exactly comparable to somebody else and hence can kind of break away from that price comparison. So this is another really important thing. And as a general concept, it's you're better off being the one person to do something great than you are to be like the fifth person to do something great. Like it is a general concept. So that's the one thing. Another thing you want to do here is see real problem power. So in other words, I'm sorry the slides are wrong here, but in other words, the thing that you want to see here with real problem power is that you're solving a problem which is actually a real problem. In other words, if you go ahead and say that like I want to go ahead and help people like tie their shoes or something, that might truly be a bit of an issue, but like, is it enough of an issue to get people concerned about it enough to buy your service or product? I don't know. And so, make sure that whatever you're doing is a real, genuine problem because your ability to sell your product or service is going to come down to how much value you can create for people. And the way that you create a lot of value for people is grab people that already are at a very, very low level of value. In other words, people that are in a lot of pain, you can go ahead and create a lot more value for than if people are in just like some pain, which you can create like a little bit more value for. So make sure that you're solving a real problem here. The other thing you want to do here, and this is one of the biggest things, is you want to find a product that people genuinely love. And when I mean they love it, like Think about a product that you absolutely love. That's the sort of thing that you want to do. And so, an iPhone is an example of that. ChatGPT is an example of that, where people just pick it up for the first time and they love it so much and they integrate it into their lives and they just cannot help but tell their friends about it. And this also plays into something called word of mouth, which is for a really well functioning business can really sometimes be upwards of 50% of all the money that they go ahead and generate. The last thing we want to talk about here is something called the asset check. And so this is a little bonus that I throw in here, kind of doing what we can to go ahead and get your mindset straight on this one. So, as a general concept, there's a difference between running a business and building an asset. And your business can be an asset, but not every business is. And so, let me put it like this: if you were a consultant or a coach or a hairstylist, you have a business and it's probably a wonderful business. But at the end of the day, it's not that different from working a job, because you're not really able to sell it. You're not really able to step away from it and still generate income. And so that becomes a bit of an issue for you, especially as an entrepreneur that many times has gone into entrepreneurship to try and find freedom, right? To try and get that sort of ability to set your own terms and live your own life. So it's a general concept. What you want to understand is that building a business is not the same as building an asset. You want to go ahead and assetize your business if you can. In other words, one of the ways that people can do that, as a consultant, for example, is go ahead and build courses. What does that do? It allows you to sell a productized service or an asset, just like this one, which will go ahead and actually let me step away from being able to teach and me, being able to, step in front of the microphone and the video every time to deliver these sort of things and give me the freedom that I'm looking for. And so this is the general concept here. You want to make sure that you're building an asset and something that can cash flow without you, because if it can cash flow without you, it's valuable to an investor, and hence you're going to be able to sell it for 6, 7, 8 times what your annual earnings might be. So it's a really important thing. All right, so now in addition to the ikigai that we talked about in the beginning, which is figuring out who you are and what the world wants and where all of that kind of overlaps, and then looking at all these timeless business principles that we overlap with that, we're gonna go ahead and overlap one extra point on top of this. And this is basically going to be what we call the mental models that change everything. There's only a few here, but we wanna go ahead and add these in so that, to almost add a little salt and pepper to your way of thinking here. And so as a first step, one of the most important things that you can do is build for a real person. This is critically important because what you see the vast majority of entrepreneurs do, myself included, when I first got started building businesses, is well, you say, well, I can build this, and I think I'm just going to build this, and then I'm going to release it, and then I'm going to find somebody to buy it. And I think that's cool, but it's obviously not ideal, as you going ahead and building for a very specific person and saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and build for, let's say, like doctors aged 35 to 40 living in New York, that want to get to work on time but don't have XYZ product. Okay, like that is a very specific thing and a very specific niche that when you build for that person, you are creating a solution for a real problem. And so as a result, it's going to be a lot easier to sell and a lot easier to go ahead and get customers down the road. Another thing you want to do here is something that's also critical. And this is something a private equity guy told me one time, by the name of Tom Evans, brilliant, brilliant entrepreneur. And what he told me is very simple. He said, do things that are trying to happen. This is some of the most simplest, profound advice that I've ever been given. But in other words, don't chase things. Don't try to force your way in the world. Look at what is naturally happening in the world and then try to position yourself in the way of those things happening. And that tends to be a much better way to do things. One comparison here, as funny as it sounds, is for a long time there was this massive garbage patch floating around the I believe the Pacific Ocean, and for a long time people were trying to chase this specific garbage patch around, trying to grab it. And eventually, what people noticed is, hey, we have like natural currents that are just running in circles. And so if we just position ourselves in the way of all these things happening, we can just go ahead and like accumulate all these things that are coming to us, at a fraction of the effort and the cost. And so this is a very similar concept. If you see the world going in a certain direction, don't fight it. Go ahead, get with it, and just do what's trying to happen. It'll make, in other words, even though a plane takes off against the wind, surf with the direction of the tides, and it's going to be a lot easier to go ahead and get far. Another thing you want to do is, again, be your own category. Again, that sort of thing that we talked about Peter Thiel doing, as opposed to being the fifth or the 10th or the 15th person to do something. Go ahead and be the first. Differentiate yourself a little bit, because it becomes very, very necessary to going ahead and keeping your profit margins high and being able to sell people. The one last thing that we want to talk about here is, again, one more quote from Naval Ravikant. And basically what he said is, that wealth comes from giving the marketplace what it wants, but doesn't yet know how to get at scale. And so the way that you can go ahead and do that um, is exactly that. And so keep this in mind whenever you're trying to build a business. Look at what people are looking for. Look at what they don't exactly know how to get, and then try to find a way to deliver that, not just like on a 1 or 2 or 3 person basis, although that is important in the beginning to go ahead and get knowledge. Think about how you can go ahead and build this into a scalable, sustainable business that you can go ahead and actually develop and launch long term. This is the way to go ahead and generate wealth. And these are some of the models that we go ahead and think about when we're getting involved in building a great business idea. If you want additional help with going ahead and refining your business idea, getting it right, making sure your business model is good and all the rest, you can go ahead and book a one-on-one workshop with me or somebody else on the team over at Thinkk.com. I'll leave the description, some sort of link that you can go ahead and look at, and also leave a whole bunch of other educational materials that you can go ahead and get for absolutely free so that you can continue your educational journey at no cost to you. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate learning about this, and we'll go ahead and see you in the next one. Thank you.